My sister's manipulation drove me to sever ties with my family, the shocking final straw. For as long as I can remember, my family has shown a clear favoritism toward my adopted sister, and it all reached a breaking point during my birthday party when the truth about her was revealed. I have always struggled with family issues, but the recent events have left me feeling completely overwhelmed, hurt, and consumed by anger and uncertainty. I'm reaching out in hopes that someone who has been through something similar can offer advice or help me gain perspective. My adopted sister Pearl is just a year younger than me, adopted by my parents as a newborn, and we grew up together. You might think this would create a close bond between us, but the reality has been far different. From my earliest memories, it was clear that my sister was the preferred one in the family. Our parents constantly showered her with attention, fulfilling every desire she had and hanging on to her every word. When I proudly showed my mom a drawing I made when I was 5, she barely acknowledged it because my sister was busy reciting the alphabet for the umpteenth time. It might seem trivial, but it was a pattern that set the tone for years of family dynamics. As we grew older, the divide only deepened. In elementary school, my sister struggled with reading, and our parents dedicated hours every night to helping her, even though I was excelling in school, with little more than a passing compliment on my report cards. When my sister had a dance recital in middle school, our parents skipped my awards ceremony at the science fair. It was always like that. Her needs, her triumphs, and her challenges always came first. I don't want to claim that I was neglected or mistreated in a traditional sense. Our basic needs were always met. We had a home and food was always on the table, but emotionally I felt completely neglected, which was incredibly painful. I learned early on that the only way to get any attention was to be perfect, top of the class, always excelling, and I pursued that relentlessly. Throughout high school, I locked myself in my room, preparing for AP exams and working on my college applications, while my sister was out partying and socializing. But it paid off. I earned a half scholarship to a prestigious university. I thought, this will finally make my parents proud. But instead of celebrating my achievement, they spent the day fretting over how my sister would cope with my absence. College was a revelation. For the first time, I was judged on my own merits, not in comparison to my sister. I made genuine friends who appreciated me for who I truly was, and I flourished academically and socially. After graduating with honors, I landed a job at a top company. Over the next 10 years, I climbed the corporate ladder, driven by the need to prove myself to my parents. I'm proud of my career, and now I hold a senior management role at a Fortune 500 company. But the pride I feel is often tinged with resentment because no matter what I achieve, my family's response is always lukewarm. Meanwhile, my sister has never really settled into a career, bouncing between jobs, and still lives with our parents, who continue to support her emotionally and financially. While my accomplishments might have pleased them somewhat, it has only seemed to reinforce their favoritism toward her. They justify her lack of focus by saying things like, she's just searching for her passion, or not everyone needs to climb the corporate ladder to find happiness. If my achievements are ever acknowledged, it's with indifference. Our family relationships are strained, and gatherings are filled with barely concealed resentment and passive-aggressive comments. I've tried to talk about my feelings, but my parents dismiss them as jealousy or being overly sensitive. As for my sister, she takes pride in her favored position, often making snide remarks about me being married to my job or too busy for family. I've been in therapy for 4 years trying to work through these issues, boost my self-esteem, and set healthy boundaries, but every encounter with my family seems to undo my progress. I've even considered cutting ties entirely, but the thought of losing my family, despite all its dysfunction, is devastating. That brings me to last week, which forced me to reevaluate my relationships with my family. As usual, my parents threw my sister a grand birthday party, with friends, extended family, and even some of her old classmates invited. There was catered food, an open bar, and even a live band. The house looked like it was hosting a wedding. In contrast, last month's celebration for my birthday was a quiet dinner for the four of us, where most of the conversation was about my sister's latest business project, a pet-themed social media app she's convinced will be the next big thing. After a couple of minutes of trying to talk about a major project I was managing at work, my parents' attention wandered. At my sister's party, I made an effort to stay engaged. I tried to be polite, interact with family members, and cheer on my sister on her special day. But as the evening wore on, old feelings of bitterness resurfaced. It wasn't just the lavish celebration, it was the way our parents fawned over her, how everyone seemed interested in her life while ignoring mine, and how she absorbed all the attention as if it was rightfully hers. As I felt a panic attack creeping up, I retreated to a corner to calm myself with a glass of wine. That's when a cousin, noticing my distress, came over to check on me. "Are you okay?" she asked, with genuine concern. For the first time that evening, someone seemed to care about how I was feeling. But before I could respond, my sister's voice cut through the crowd. She raised her glass and tapped it with a spoon, drawing everyone's attention. "Everyone, please," she said, her voice a bit unsteady. The room fell silent. Her cheeks were flushed, betraying the amount of alcohol she had consumed. Yet she still managed to smile convincingly as she began speaking. At first, it seemed like a typical birthday toast. She thanked our parents for their love, expressed gratitude for everyone's presence, and appreciated the celebration. Seconds later, standing behind me, she said, "Tomorrow." But then her tone changed, and a chill ran down my spine. "I have to especially thank Mom and Dad," she said, her voice laced with something unfamiliar. "I've always gotten so much more from them than their own daughter. Just look at this party. When was the last time they did anything like this for my sister?" The room turned to me as I felt my face flush, but she wasn't done. "I guess that's because I've always been the better daughter," she continued, her words slurring slightly from the champagne. "Sure, my sister has a fancy job and makes a lot of money, but who do Mom and Dad truly love? Who makes their lives better? It's not the cold, career-obsessed robot who barely has time for family." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Aside from a few uncomfortable coughs and my sister's voice growing louder, the room was eerily quiet. "Funny, isn't it?" she said with a slight wobble. "Everyone's always told me how brilliant my sister is, how successful she'll be. But look at us now. I'm surrounded by people who care about me, while she's alone, married to her work." I turned to our parents, hoping they would step in, but they just sat there, uneasy, doing nothing. At that moment, I felt more isolated than ever. My sister went on, attacking every part of my life, my appearance, my lack of a romantic partner, even suggesting that my professional success was due to me using my body to get ahead. Each word made me shrink further. The years of pent-up hurt and frustration threatened to overwhelm me. Just when I thought I couldn't take anymore, my aunt, our mother's sister, stepped in. She had a determined look on her face, and I could see she was furious. I was standing when she walked up to me, handing me an envelope. Her voice cut through the tension. "Don't open this until I'm done talking," she said. Her fiery gaze turned toward the crowd. What followed felt like a scene from a soap opera. My aunt revealed that my sister wasn't adopted. She was her biological daughter. Apparently, when my aunt unexpectedly became pregnant in her early 20s, she asked my parents to adopt the child rather than have an abortion. "I thought I was doing the right thing," my aunt's voice wavered with emotion. "I thought my sister and her husband could give her a better life. I thought she'd grow up to be a kind, grateful person. But instead, she turned to my sister, who had gone pale. You've turned into a selfish, arrogant person who thinks it's okay to belittle her sister in front of everyone. I've watched this dynamic unfold for years, and I can't stay silent anymore." The room erupted in chaos. My sister screamed, demanding to know if it was true. Our parents shot angry glares at my aunt, trying to calm her down. Family members were pointing and murmuring about me. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me as I stood there, clutching the envelope. Once again, my aunt's voice broke through the clamor. I thought that if my daughter grew up with my sister, she'd turn out to be a good person. Clearly, I was wrong. No decent person would ever humiliate their sister like you just did. She then turned to me, urging me to open the envelope. Inside was a blank check. I was going to give this to her for her birthday, my aunt said. But after seeing what she's become, I want no part in rewarding that behavior. With that, she left, leaving behind stunned silence. It didn't last. My sister, in a frantic fit, lunged for the check, but our parents had to physically hold her back as she cried and yelled. I couldn't handle it anymore. I ran to my room, slammed the door, and broke down. The years of suppressed pain, resentment, and feelings of inadequacy came rushing out all at once. I ignored the frantic knocking on my door and the distant arguments below as I sobbed for hours. A week has passed since then, and I'm still unsure what to do. Aside from attending to basic needs, I've stayed in my room. Though our parents have tried to reach out, I can't bring myself to face them. My sister has been alternating between begging for forgiveness and demanding the check, and sending me angry messages. There's a part of me that's tempted to cash that check, pack my bags, and disappear without looking back. I've spent my whole life striving for the approval and love of people who, no matter how hard I try, just can't seem to offer it in return. Maybe it's time to stop trying. Maybe it's time to put myself first for once. But then, there's this deep fear of losing my family. Despite all their flaws and dysfunction, they're the only family I've ever known. The idea of being without them is terrifying. Living alone, going on vacations by myself, having no one to call when things go wrong. And I'm struggling with conflicting emotions about my sister. On one hand, I'm angry with her for what she did at the party and for all the years of subtle insults. On the other hand, I feel a strange sympathy for her. It must be devastating to learn that you were adopted, especially in such a humiliating way in front of everyone. Does that excuse her actions? No, it doesn't. But it does make things more complicated. As for my parents, I can't wrap my mind around how they could sit there while my sister was screaming at me. Were they just stunned? Or does their silence reveal something deeper? All the years of emotional neglect and favoritism come rushing back. How do I even begin to process this? It feels like I'm standing at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take. Should I try to repair these broken relationships? Can something genuine be built from such a toxic foundation? Or should I just walk away and start fresh, no longer chasing after the approval I'll never get? Rebbit, I don't know what to do. I've spent my entire life seeking my family's love, only to be rejected and humiliated in the process. If, as Ransers, you all appear, how do I move forward from here? Should I accept that some families can't be fixed, or is there still a chance for healing? Any advice would be so appreciated. I feel lost, drowning in confusion and pain, and I don't know which way is up anymore. First update. It's been 2 days since that awful birthday party, and I'm still reeling from everything that happened. This morning, my aunt came to visit me. As she spoke about the adoption, she looked exhausted. She told me how she was young and frightened when she got pregnant. At the time, it seemed like the best option for my parents, who had been trying for another child. They decided to keep it secret for years. My aunt had been saving money, planning to give it to my sister once she was ready to be independent. But after seeing everything that happened at the party, she realized I was more deserving of it. Despite my protests, my aunt insisted that the money was compensation for all the emotional labor. Later that day, I checked into a hotel in the city, packed my things, and left a note for my parents. I needed time alone to reflect. I ignored all their calls and messages in the following days. I spent the time thinking things through, talking with my therapist, and even consulting a financial advisor about the check. 5 days later, I sent my parents an email. I told them I needed space, but that I was okay. I laid out what I needed for things to improve. They had to acknowledge the years of favoritism. We'd go to family therapy. My sister would apologize publicly, they would treat us equally, and they would stop excusing her behavior. They responded quickly, relieved, and asked me to come home so we could talk. We agreed to meet at a cafe near my hotel. The conversation was tense. My parents agreed to therapy and promised to work on our relationship. But when it came to my sister's public apology, they hesitated. They said revealing her adoption in such a way had been traumatic for her. I stood my ground, demanding a public apology. After some back and forth, we left with an uneasy truce. My parents agreed to everything except the public apology. They said they would talk to my sister about it in the coming days. The back and forth continued. At first, my sister sent angry messages, refusing to apologize. But as I held firm, her tone began to soften. She eventually apologized, saying she was upset and drunk at the party. I responded that the apology needed to be for more than just the party. It needed to address years of hurtful behavior. She sent more angry texts, then silence. My parents tried to mediate, suggesting she write a letter or apologize to the family in private. I was torn. Part of me wondered if it was worth the fight. It felt so exhausting. My therapist reminded me that prioritizing my health isn't selfish. Setting boundaries, she said, is necessary for healthy relationships. So I've made a decision. I'm giving my family one last chance to meet my terms. I'll use my aunt's check to start fresh elsewhere if they can't. It's a terrifying and hopeful decision. Whatever happens next will shape my future and my relationships. I hope I'm making the right choice. I'll keep you updated. I'm grateful for all the support. Knowing I'm not alone in this helps more than I can express. Second update. A week has passed since my last update and everything has changed. I've decided to revoke the conditions I set for reconciliation, but not for the reasons you might think. After days of arguing with my family, I came to realize that their attempts at compromise weren't about showing genuine remorse, but more about trying to minimize the damage. My sister's apology texts became increasingly manipulative, bouncing between gaslighting and guilt-tripping. "You're tearing this family apart," she'd say, followed by, "I don't even remember what I said at the party. Are you sure you're not exaggerating?" Meanwhile, my parents were still trying to find a solution, but it seemed they were avoiding the real issues at hand. They refused to acknowledge their role in creating this toxic dynamic and instead suggested a private family meeting where my sister would apologize. I began to lose sleep, checked my phone constantly, and feel anxious every time it buzzed. The pressure was mounting, and it became clear that this whole situation was taking a toll on my mental health. So I decided to retract my conditions, not because I thought they were unreasonable, but because I realized that real change can't be forced. It has to come from within, and my family just isn't there yet. I wrote a brief email to my parents telling them I was withdrawing my demands. I needed space to heal, and I asked them not to contact me for a while. Their reaction was swift. My phone flooded with calls, texts, and voicemails. I had to ask security to escort them out of my office when they showed up there. They even reached out to some of my friends, trying to persuade me to come back. "We love you. Please come home. How can you do this to us? And your sister is devastated. She's not eating," they begged. It felt like emotional warfare, and sometimes the guilt was unbearable. I questioned whether I was overreacting or whether I should just go back and pretend everything was fine. But then I remembered the years of feeling invisible, watching my sister be constantly favored, and having my accomplishments ignored. To cope with the stress, I started seeing my therapist twice a week, and I blocked my family's phone numbers and set up email filters. It may seem extreme, but it was necessary for my well-being. Work became my refuge, a place to escape my empty apartment. I poured myself into my tasks, staying late at the office. Some coworkers noticed the change in me and expressed concern. I couldn't bring myself to explain everything, but their support meant the world to me. I still haven't cashed my aunt's check, and it serves as a constant reminder of the decision I need to make. It's tucked away in my desk drawer, reminding me that I don't need their money or their approval. Part of me feels like tearing it up, but then another part sees it as a lifeline, an opportunity to start fresh somewhere far away. I've started looking for job opportunities in other cities and even abroad. The thought of a complete change is both exhilarating and terrifying. Could I really leave everything behind and start over? For now, I'm taking things one day at a time. I'm getting better at accepting the unease that comes with uncertainty, trusting that I'll know what to do when the time is right. Some days are harder than others. I miss my family so much it physically hurts. But there are moments of surprising peace when I realize my breathing is lighter than it's been in years. I know this journey is far from over. There will be more emotional hurdles to overcome and more tough decisions to make, but for the first time in my life, I'm putting myself first. It feels right, though it's also uncomfortable. I appreciate all the support and advice I've received. Having this space to process and share my thoughts has been more helpful than I ever expected. When I have more to update, I'll share it. For now, I'm focusing on healing and discovering who I am outside of my family's shadow. Third update. It's been 3 weeks since my last update and things have taken a dramatic turn for the worse. My sister showed up uninvited at my aunt's house last Saturday and it was a complete shock. She barged in, clearly drunk and furious, screaming, "You've ruined everything! You're trying to take my mother!" The smell of alcohol hit me hard and her eyes were wild. My aunt and I had to physically restrain her as she tried to lunge at me. She accused me of always being jealous and turning everyone against her. Even after everything that had happened, the venom in her voice was chilling. I was stunned by my aunt's response. She's usually calm and collected, but in that moment she snapped. "You need to leave now," she demanded, her face hardening as she dragged my sister out of the house. My sister continued shouting outside, causing a scene that attracted the attention of the neighbors. "You're not my mother," she yelled at my aunt. "I was exposed to you. You can't act like you care anymore." A few neighbors threatened to call the police. Eventually, my sister got into her car and drove off. My aunt was shaken by the whole ordeal. Inside, she admitted that she had been struggling with guilt over the adoption. She had thought that telling the truth would fix things, but now she realized the damage was far more extensive than she had ever imagined. "I thought I was doing the right thing," she said quietly, "but I might have just made everything worse." The fallout from this incident has been huge. My parents called, furious, accusing me of trying to destroy the family and turning my aunt against my sister. I tried to explain, but they wouldn't listen. Now, extended family members have taken sides, and the entire family is divided. What started as a private issue has escalated into a full-blown family crisis. The intensity of it all is overwhelming. I feel guilty even though I know I'm not to blame. But I also just want to get away and start fresh. My aunt, worried about my safety, has suggested I stay with her for a while. I'm considering it, but I'm afraid it might make things worse. I'm doing my best to maintain some semblance of normalcy through all of this. I make an effort to take care of myself, go to work and attend therapy sessions, but the constant family conflict is a heavy weight. I can't help but wonder about the long-term impact. Can a family overcome such deep-rooted resentment and anger? Should I walk away, or is there still hope? I'm trying my hardest to avoid being drawn back into the chaos, focusing instead on my own healing for now. Despite the difficulty, I'm determined to find a solution, even if my family isn't ready to meet me halfway. Your unwavering support means more than you know. I'll update you when I can, hopefully with better news. Takamale, Kasidi. Update 4. A month has passed since my last update, and I've made some life-changing decisions. After the intense episode with my sister at my aunt's house, I realized I had to take decisive steps to protect my mental well-being and start building my own future. I've fully immersed myself in work, even asking my manager about relocating to a new city or taking on additional responsibilities. Her response was more supportive than I ever expected. Now, I'm being considered for a senior management role that could involve a nationwide relocation. It's a thrilling opportunity, but it's also terrifying. Along with leading a large project, this new role comes with a significant salary boost. In preparation for this shift, I've been working 12-hour days, attending every training session I can find, and networking like never before. My heightened energy has raised eyebrows among my colleagues, though I've skillfully dodged most of their questions. Only a few close colleagues know what's really going on, and they've been invaluable in supporting me. On the financial front, I've made a decision about my aunt's check. After much deliberation and a conversation with a financial advisor, I decided to cash it. I reframed it as an investment in my future, a future free from the toxic dynamics of my family. With my therapist's help, I've secured a small apartment in my potential new city, one with a breathtaking view of the skyline. It's a modern, compact space, and I've used the remainder of the money to create a diversified investment portfolio. For the first time in my life, I feel financially independent and secure. The hardest part has been the final severing of ties with my family. I've blocked all their phone numbers and email addresses. I've asked my aunt not to pass on any messages from them. Although I know this is essential for my recovery, it feels like I'm cutting away a part of myself. There are still moments of doubt. I sometimes feel tempted to call late at night, hoping for some sort of reconciliation, but then I remember the years of gaslighting, the constant undermining, and the violent altercation at my aunt's house. It strengthens my resolve to stay on this path. I've recently started seeing a new therapist who specializes in estrangement and familial trauma. She's been helping me work through the sadness and guilt, replacing the family-centered values I once held dear with healthier ones. We're focusing on building a new support system and forging new connections. I've also joined a support group for people who are estranged from their families. It's been both painful and reassuring to hear their stories. I've realized that I'm not alone in this, and it's possible to live a fulfilling life without the family you were born into. WordPress. As for my aunt, we've maintained our relationship, but with clear boundaries. She doesn't try to act as a mediator, and she respects my decision to cut off contact with the rest of the family. While her support has been priceless, I'm careful not to become overly reliant on her. I feel a mixture of excitement and fear about the future. The idea of starting fresh in a new city with a challenging new job and without the safety net of family is both liberating and daunting. For the first time, I feel like I'm living life on my own terms, free from societal and familial expectations. I've begun exploring new hobbies and interests that I never had time for while I was consumed by family issues. I've joined a local hiking group. I'm learning to cook, and I'm even considering taking up painting. I haven't felt this peaceful in years. As I pack up my apartment and prepare for this new chapter, yes, there's a sadness in letting go of what I've lost, but there's also hope for the future. I'm no longer the ignored child or the family scapegoat. I am just me, forging my own path. I want to thank everyone for your unwavering support along this journey. Your words have meant more to me than you can possibly know. This will be my final update. It's time to close this chapter and focus on writing the next one. Here's to my future. Thank you for being a part of this. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay tuned for more real-life stories that may surprise you.